How you think is the most important thing about you.
So welcome to F1S1 and Session 1. This session is pretty much just going to be an overview of the class, kind of an introduction to the furnace, how it works and where it came from. Also a little bit of an introduction into who the heck I am. Several of you that are watching the DVD, you've probably heard my name because you're watching the DVD, but at the same time you may not know specifically who I am. So today and in this class, but also in classes that are coming in the future, I want to let you in on more of my story and what has brought me to this point, and how the Lord planted a seed of discipleship training inside of my heart and helped me through His grace and through His mercy develop that over the years until eventually I was at a point where I'm able to pass that information on to you and let you begin your journey. So, but I do have my notes here. We're going to be walking through each of the classes. Each of the times on the DVDs, I'm probably going to be talking for between 20 to 30 minutes, and then I want to leave plenty of time for you with your facilitator to be able to do discussion, to be able to talk about some of the points that we covered. I will from time to time throw out some questions to help some of that discussion, but for the most part, I'll be doing my part probably around 20, 30 minutes and then turning it back to your facilitator. You guys, I think you're really going to enjoy the furnace. I think you're really going to enjoy the information that you get, the education. I know that the facilitators have designed a wonderful experience for you to have as well. Really, without the experience, the furnace is just a class that you take, and it really loses a lot of its power when it's not connected to a very specific experience, whether it be a summer camp or whether it be an after-school program or a missions trip or an extended missions trip, or it could just be something that you're doing there within a youth group or within a college group there in your church, where you are doing ongoing activity, spiritual activity in the kingdom of God. So, looking forward to dive into this. Again, I think that you're going to learn a lot. There have been hundreds of people that have gone before you through this furnace program that feel like in just 15 classes, they have learned, just 15 hours, they have grown more than they have in their entire life because they have really embraced the information and experience that goes on inside of the furnace. The final 3E, if you remember, of the 3 E's, the final one is evaluation. And I want to encourage you from the very outset to open up your heart to be evaluated. Open up your heart to the facilitators. Open up your heart to the directors of your program so that they can mentor you and help you navigate through the emotions that will come up, help you navigate through the thought conflicts that will come up, because we're going to be talking about some major traditional ideas that many of us have grown up with, and many of us have tried to build our Christian life on. And for one reason or another, as we've been trying to grow and mature, we find that this thing called maturity just seems to be a mystery. It seems to be very difficult to grow in the Lord. Even though I've known Jesus for a long time, I don't feel like I'm growing. I'm still struggling with some of the same stuff. I still have doubts. I still have things that I don't understand. I still have times where I'm doing really good, but then I screw up and I feel like I have to start all over again. So I encourage you, again, it may take some time, but I strongly encourage you to begin opening up to your facilitator as well as to your group here as you walk through the furnace, to begin to let them into your life. Because again, without the evaluation piece, really, this is just a class. And like many other classes, we can take the class, get the information, but then soon we forget. It just leaks right out of our ears. Okay, so one of the first things I want to do is just introduce you to a term that may come up over and over as you walk through the furnace. And this term is called a metron. Okay? Your metron is simply your ultimate design, the ultimate purpose that you have been created. It's like the ultimate or the supreme impact that the Lord has designed for you to have on earth as it is in heaven. And let's say that your ultimate design or your ultimate metron is something huge, way out here like this. All right, it's just this. It's got a huge capacity. You have been created. You have been designed by God to have a huge impact here on this earth. But we don't all start there. Although if you're like me, when I was a little kid, I already wanted to be like the big man that did everything. But the Lord has a way of designing our life and putting our life together, overseeing our life and supervising our life, and creating circumstances that help prepare us and grow us into our ultimate design. So where we start a lot of times is in a very small capacity. We're young, we don't have a lot of resources, we don't really know a lot, we have some passion, we have some desire, but we really don't have a lot of skill, talent, or resources to have that big of an impact. But what the Lord will begin to do, and this is important, we're going to be talking about this quite a bit, but it's very important in the ways of the Lord. What He will begin to do is He will begin to orchestrate circumstances in your life for you to process struggle and process difficulty. As you process and as you rightly think about and navigate through the difficulties, what will happen is you will begin to grow. And as it happens, what will happen is you'll grow from here and your capacity will increase. And then your capacity will increase again and again, and you can see where all of this is going as you grow. A lot of times I used to think, and this made it really difficult, especially with my life with the Lord, is I thought that growth would be like a linear plane. But what happened, unfortunately, is I would begin to grow and begin to grow, but then I'd mess up. Something would happen, I would do something wrong, either on accident or I would plan it. You probably know what I'm talking about. I would plan it, and then I would feel like because I messed up, I had to go all the way back and start again. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever found that, man, I'm doing good. Oh no, I screwed up. Now I have to go back and start? I'm sure you have. I know that I felt that way a lot. And eventually, this cycle of starting and having to start over, starting, messing up, having to start over, got me into just a circle. And it got very frustrating and very difficult to have any confidence when it came to loving the Lord, because I felt like I was always limited with what I could do. But in reality, this is how we grow. We grow by our capacity. We grow in our ability to understand, our ability to love, our ability to function in the kingdom of God. Now, one of the things I want to say also in this idea of metron, your metron will be made up of a whole bunch of little process events as you grow in your life. For instance, this right here, this struggle or difficulty that came up in your life, this is a process event. If you can navigate through that and learn how to think rightly about that, then on the other side of every process event is a promotion. And you grow in your capacity, you grow in your understanding. But with every promotion, you know, eventually is going to come another process event. And so on, and so on, and so on. And we grow, and we grow, and we grow. There's never this time where I have to go all the way back to the beginning, okay? And it's very important for you to understand that. There's never a time where you have to go all the way back to the beginning. All that is going on here is, as you have increased and got into that promotion, things are going to look different, they're going to feel different, you're going to act different, you're going to, oh my gosh, you're going to feel overwhelmed. But over time, you'll get used to that promotion. You'll get used to that increased capacity in your life. And just as you start getting comfortable with it, the Lord will knock on your door and He'll say, hey, let's go a little bit more. And He'll expand that just a little bit more. And again, oh no, what am I going to do? That's why it's so important to have somebody in our life that helps us navigate through each of those process events. But again, each of those process events are all designed to prepare us to meet our ultimate design, our ultimate impact on this earth. So that's the idea behind the metron. Again, we're going to be coming back to this over and over, but this is kind of the path. What is it that David says in Psalms? Lord, teach me your way so I can walk in your paths. This is one of the principles that's very important for us to understand. If you look at this artistically, which I'm not a great artist, but if you look at this, this is how growth happens in nature. If you cut a tree in half, you will see these growth rings. This is how growth happens in nature. It's a very natural way for us to grow. Even though I may be all the way out here and I make a mistake, it doesn't mean that I go all the way back to the beginning. Even if I screw up really big, the furthest I would go back is just that next process event because I've already conquered all of that. I already understand all of that. Have you ever had a struggle that you thought you had overcome, but then on down the road, it comes up again? And you're going, oh my gosh, I thought I did this. I thought I've already dealt with this. Oh, I guess I haven't. I guess I've got to start over again. Bingo. That's not true. You have dealt with it. You have processed through it. The only thing now is that you are processing it at a greater measure. So you don't have to go all the way back and start again. You're just processing that inner struggle or that certain situation in your life in a greater measure. Whether it be sin, habitual sin, whether it be forgiveness or unforgiveness or anger or bitterness or whatever it might be, you're just dealing with it in a greater level. I hope that's encouraging for you because it is a very important way in viewing how life works. You know, this thing plays out several times in the Bible as well as in my life that you'll find out more and more. It plays out several times in the Bible. Number one, as you can see there in your notes, this was Joseph's life. You know, he went through several process events on his way to his ultimate metron. His metron was to rule a nation. But when he got his first dream of his brothers bowing down to him, he thought that the big plan here was for him to rule over his brothers. And he told them, probably not a good idea, but he told them, hey, you guys are all going to be bowing down to me. But his idea there was just that he was going to be the leader of his household. But the Lord had something much bigger than that. As you guys know, he thought he was going to lead his household, and the next thing you know, he finds himself in the pit. Hello, process event. He finds himself in the pit. It's time for him to navigate, time for him to begin to think differently about, oh my gosh, it's terrible, life is terrible, God, how come you did this, how come you left me, and everybody's bad and everybody's evil and all that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily true. What's going on is the Lord was preparing him. So he gets up out of the pit and he ends up in Potiphar's house. Now he's thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to get to rule Potiphar's house. He had all kinds of favor. Potiphar had a ton of slaves. He had all kinds of things going on. He was a governor, as you know. So he had all kinds of activity going on in his life. And he put Joseph in charge of all of this stuff. So, he was wanting to go skiing or he was wanting to go play on vacation, and he put Joseph in charge of all this. So you can see already his life had expanded from just ruling his house to now ruling over Potiphar's house, which include the government and business and so on. Potiphar taught him everything about how to run the house and how to run his business. So he's going, oh, this is great. He could have just stayed there, but the Lord had a bigger picture for him. The Lord wanted him to rule a nation. So his next process event, as you guys know the story out of Genesis, his next process event was heading to jail. Again, it looks like on the outside he's heading in the wrong direction. It seems like he's contracting more and more and more. Things get good, but then he's got to start over. Things get good, but he goes back and forth. But it's actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. See, because it was in the prison where before long, again, he gained favor, and now he was over thousands of prisoners. Over thousands of prisoners as they were in, and all of the management, the prison, the jail guard, turned everything over to him. Once again, he had that favor because he was learning how to do it. Chances are very good he applied everything he had learned about business and the smooth running of a household that he learned at Potiphar's house in the prison. And this was what set him apart from everyone else. So he's going, okay, well, I guess even though I'm in prison, this is a pretty good gig. I'm getting to do a whole lot of stuff. I'm getting some comforts over here because I am kind of the leader in a lot of ways. But again, the Lord had something bigger for him. So he ends up outside of the prison, ends up all the way to the palace, sitting on the right hand of Pharaoh, the king. Eventually, Pharaoh says, you've got my kingdom. I will let you run my kingdom. So eventually he had reached his ultimate metron. But again, at the very beginning, he misunderstood what that was. I remember in my own life feeling the same way. And feeling like when I was a young kid, I had some athletic talent, so I thought I was going to be Joe Athlete, and I was just going to be doing all this stuff athletically, But I got into college, and I started playing football in college, but after a year, I said, I don't want to do this anymore, and I quit playing football. All of a sudden, what I thought was going to be my identity in athletics was gone. Process event, I didn't know what to do. I started kind of spinning out. Didn't really know what to do. I changed my major in college about the same time. Everything started swirling because I was in the midst of a process event. And many times in the midst of a process event, or what we would call transition, there's difficulty, there's struggle, there's some anger. I feel like I've lost something. I feel like I'm not ever going to get something that's coming in the future. Process events can be pretty difficult sometimes. Once again, why it's so important for you to have someone to help you through it. But it wasn't long before I began to remember, but my family has a ministry. They started this summer camp. And so I just kind of shifted over into that. And I said, this is where I will find my identity. Because I felt like the Lord had a huge impact for me here on this earth. I said, I'm going to do it through Shepherd's Fold Ranch, the ministry that my mom and dad had started. That's where I'm going to make my mark. I'm going to go and I'm going to be a summer camp counselor. I'm going to be a camp director, and that's going to be my impact. And it was a wonderful dream. But it wasn't long before I entered another process event. My dad fired me. That's right. My dad fired me from the family business. And that's a whole other story for another time, but I got fired from the family business. Once again, I thought I was going backwards. I'm going, Lord, I'm trying to do what you're telling me to do, but then I feel like I go back. And then I'm trying to do what you're telling me to do, but then I feel like I go back. But in actuality, what he was doing was expanding me and expanding me. Before long, I found myself, I had gotten my degree in college as a teacher, and so I found myself teaching in a small school. Loved it. Had a great time. I taught science and several other things and coach. Had a little bit of success, but not a ton of success in it. But I was enjoying where I was. It was a small school, so I knew all the kids and they all knew me, but I felt like I was having an impact, and I began to go, all right, this is going to be where I make my mark in life. This is good. This is good. I'm getting to know. I'm with them every day, not just during the summer, but I'm kind of with them because I also went to church at this place as well. But the Lord had another process event coming my way. That's right. I got fired from a Christian school. Again, I was going through some difficult times in my life, and they were right to send me on my way because I wasn't navigating my process event very well. There were some difficult things happening. I didn't really have someone to help me walk through that. It was coming out in my teaching. But again, I thought I was going backwards. Oh no, what am I going to do? I got fired from a job. God, you keep getting me fired. No, He was preparing me because now I'm in the teaching world. I'm learning how to teach, not just how to lead, but I'm learning how to teach and how to talk to larger and larger groups of people. My next job was in a much, much larger school up in Kansas City. I began to coach in several different sports. I began to have some success there. I began to have some influence among several thousand people now. I was going, wow, this is really something. I was, again, getting some success. I was growing in that promotion, and I was growing and impacting the lives of thousands now each year as a school teacher. But once again, the Lord had a plan. He was going, Clay, I've got an opportunity. And that's when he invited me to come to Avant, Oklahoma to be a camp director. So I decided I would do that. So my wife and I decided we'd move from Kansas City to Oklahoma. What an interesting turn. Now I'm back at my family's business, back at my family's ministry, and I am now the executive director, not just a camp director and not just a counselor, but I'm actually the executive director. The Lord had expanded. And so I was there for 10 years and things were going good, and we started the F1S program and discipleship training. I'm using all the skills that I had learned with each of those process events and promotion, process event and promotion. I'm using all of the skills and resources that I had gained through that in my job there at Shepherd's Fold. And then finally, after 10 years, the Lord again began to say, Clay, here comes another process event. And I started a company called the Leadership Initiative. And at this point, I've been in the Leadership Initiative, started it as an entrepreneur, and I am learning a ton. And I know that the Lord has more for me and more for me. And now when struggles come and difficulties come and hard things happen in my life, I know that it's all a matter of His plan, that He is preparing me to reach my ultimate metron, for me to reach my ultimate impact and capacity of what He has created me to do. I'm sure there's probably been some difficult times that you've had as you've walked through your life. You might be in something that's very difficult right now. The question is, how are you interpreting it? Are you interpreting it as those people are bad, or the situation is wrong, or something's wrong with God, or something's wrong with me? That would be an inappropriate way to interpret it. I guarantee the Lord is preparing you for a greater measure. And if you can grab somebody to help you navigate through that and help you understand how to think about that struggle, you'll be able to get through it quicker, and you'll be able to step into the next promotion even quicker. So I encourage you to do that, again, with your facilitator, to begin to let them into your life. Talk to them about some of the things that are going on now in your life, or may have been going on a long time ago, struggles that you're still trying to get over, hurts and wounds and pains that you're still trying to get through. How you think is the most important thing about you. And if you think wrongly, eventually you will act wrongly. So the furnace is all about learning how to think rightly. Fantastic. Now, the interesting thing about my story, as well as the story of Joseph in the Bible, is that the destiny was much bigger than just what we were thinking at that very time. You see, I was wanting my desires to be fulfilled. And so my desires were small. I had a limited view of what I thought was going on, and therefore I wanted my desires to be fulfilled. But the Lord, He's not as enthusiastic about fulfilling my desires. What He wants to fulfill is my destiny. So be careful getting caught in that trap of just wanting your desires to be filled today, when the Lord is actually designing your life to fulfill the destiny that He has created you for. So from there, let's go ahead and hop into over here on this page where we're talking about some different beliefs. Did you know that knowledge isn't really what's going to move you forward? Knowledge is good. It's good to understand. It's good to learn things. But knowledge is not the key. Again, it's very different than what I used to think. I used to think, oh, I just don't know enough. And I keep sinning or I keep messing up because I don't know enough. Really, it wasn't about knowing. It was about obeying and submitting. And even today, if I'm not careful, I know a whole lot more than what I'm actually submitting to and obeying with the Lord. He has more and more for us. But you know what I do believe? I do believe that how you think is the most important thing about you. How you process, how you think about God is the most important thing about you. As I said before, I believe that it is possible to love Jesus with your heart and be passionate about Him and still struggle with sin. I also believe that it's possible to live a life free from the battle with sin. Man, can you imagine that? Man, guys, I tell you, up to like mid-30s, I just had all this battle, and I just felt like I never could get free from it. But the Lord brought me through, helped me learn how to think rightly about that, and I've been set free from the battle with sin. It's a wonderful way to live, and I want to encourage you to continue to move to that same revelation in your life. Also, I believe that even though there's a lot of statistics about 18 to 24-year-olds being lost from the church and everything like that, I feel very strongly that there are a ton of 18 to 24-year-olds that are passionate about Jesus. And what you're looking for is a way to express it. You're just not finding it in the traditional ways. You're looking for other ways to express. I hope that your time in the furnace gives you an opportunity to express your passion for Jesus. Because once again, your action is connected to your belief, not just to your knowledge. I'd like to finish up just a little bit talking about journaling. Okay, journaling is going to be a big part of the furnace. It's a big part of any development, personal development, spiritual development. It's a big part of growth. It's keeping track. All journaling is keeping track of the path. Because you'll find eventually as you reach and move towards your ultimate metron, once you get out into this area, you will learn that it's not just about you getting bigger, but it's about you getting bigger and increasing your capacity so that you can help others. So it's very important to keep track of the path. What were you thinking? What was going on in your life? How were you processing things early on? As opposed, and also, as you grow, how is that growth, how is your thinking, and how is your process changing? I started journaling back in 1988, and I'll get into that a little bit later about my life in journaling and so on. But I've been journaling for almost 25 years now. And it's not just what I have learned about journaling, but it's also what I've learned from journaling. And I used to journal when I was a little kid, and you probably know this experience. You get something, you start writing in it, you do like 3 or 4 pages, and then all of a sudden you stop and it goes on the shelf. And then, I'm going to journal, and you start another thing. Before long, you have like a shelf full of like 3 or 4 pages in each one, because you start and stop, start and stop. can get kind of frustrating, and you eventually go, that journaling thing, I'm not going to do it. If you're not a journaler, that's okay, but I strongly encourage you to work on practicing becoming a journaler, because it's very important to write it down. When you write it, you own it. So I want to talk about a few things that keep people from journaling. Obviously, I think a lot of times people don't want to journal just because they're afraid that somebody could read it. They're afraid that somebody would see it and all of a sudden they would know. Even if I am going to journal, I'm going to make it very fluffy. I'm going to keep it right on the surface because I don't want anyone to know what's going on down deep. And that's unfortunate that we feel that way, because it keeps us from getting the full value of journaling. But also, sometimes people don't want to journal because they don't want to get in touch with all of their feelings. And journal's all about the feelings and emotions and everything like that. Yeah, it can be, but you don't have to go there. A lot of times that can be overwhelming and be very intimidating for people. You open up, you got that blank piece of paper, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to write deep thoughts. But you don't have to start there. So let's take a look really quick at 6 different levels of journaling, okay? They don't all have to be these deep thoughts, but it can start with something that's very simple, something that we're probably very familiar with already in our journaling. And this very first level in journaling is what I call just the data level. This is where you're just writing about events and people that are in your life, maybe situations and things that are going on. You know, I'm going to this school, this is what happened today, and this is what Susie did. But it's just very, pretty non-threatening. It's just talking about what's going on. You can even hear talk about the weather and what it's been like. Hey, we had a snow day today or something like that. Just basic data about your daily life. Now the next level, if you would like to go there, the next level is just where we begin to write about how those, the effects of those things that are going on, how they are affecting us. If we want to talk about a specific thing that's going on in our life, and this is how it's affecting me. Not necessarily these are my feelings, it's just this is how it's changing my world. I've met some new friends, seems to be expanding my social circle or something like that. Or I met some friends, seems to be limiting me with some of my older friends or something like that. So again, the next level will be talking about the effects of that data. As we continue to go deeper in our journaling, as we're comfortable with it, we get to actually begin asking questions. Now we're beginning to make a transition here. This is where things begin to get very interesting, because when we ask questions, what we are doing is we're actually dabbling with, catch this, we're actually dabbling with the level of humility that it takes to say, I'm really not in control of all of this. I'm really not the one that's making everything happen. But we begin to ask questions. This is huge. Did you guys know that the true sign of a disciple is the questions they ask, not the answers that they have? Again, beep, that was a huge revelation for me. I used to think I needed to know the answers. If I was going to be the leader, I had to know the answers. And so I tried to avoid any situation where I didn't know the answer. Also, if someone would ever question me, Clay, why do we have to do that? I would shut them down, because I didn't want anybody questioning my authority. It was a very dangerous place for me to be at that time in my life as a leader, because I didn't ever ask any questions. So this is a great place in your journal to be. I encourage all of the leaders that I train to journal. And usually when we sit down over coffee or we sit down in a class similar to what you're in right now, my very first question to them is, what questions do you have? Because questions reveal that you are processing life. And again, we aren't taught really well as we grow up in school to process information as it comes to us. We're sitting in science class, the teacher's talking and talking, wah, 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 and then finally at the end they go, are there any questions? I mean, they've just spent like 50 minutes talking about the recombination of DNA, and nobody raises their hand. Well, okay, one person raises their hand, but the only question is, hey, when's the test and what's going to be on it, type of thing. And if I do bad on the test, is it going to like hurt my grade? Well, of course it's going to hurt your grade, But we have these silly little questions that we ask, as opposed to processing information as it comes. So I strongly encourage you, as you feel comfortable, to get to this level where you're writing down the questions that you have about what's going on in your life. If you're not, well, I'll stop there. Next of all, as we continue to go deeper in our thinking, deeper in our processing, we eventually get to this place called value statements, where we come to some of the truths that we have in our life, where I am having these questions because this is how I am interpreting things. I'm interpreting it this way, but life seems to be interpreting it that way, and there's a conflict. And I begin to uncover and reveal some of these value statements in my life. This is when journaling begins to, a lot of times I'll need a mentor, somebody to help me walk through things. And then finally, you get to that level that we all are afraid of from the very beginning, which is where we get to talking about all of our feelings and emotions and the deep thoughts and all these deep fears and everything. An example of this might be like dad is, let's say that, we moved, or my family is moving, and the effects of that, everything's going to be new. And then all of a sudden the questions that I have is, why? I'm like panicking. I'm freaking out right here. The effects, I'm panicking, I'm nervous, I'm scared. And then my questions are, why do we have to move? What's going to be there that's not here? If I'm not careful, I can misinterpret the answer to this stuff and blame my parents and say they're bad, say that they're evil. They got horns coming out of their head because they're moving me and I'm right in the middle of my high school career or something like that. Eventually, our value statements that we begin to make come out very similar to, I love the security of the familiar. I don't want to move because I feel safe here. It's not, I don't want to move because it's stupid to move. All right, where are you going with that thing? But I don't want to move because I feel the security of things that are familiar. I've got my friends here and so on. And when I think of the future, that's how we move into number 5 here. When I think of the future and think about being someplace else, what if people don't accept me? What if people don't understand me? What if my old friends, if I never get to see them again? This is where the feelings are coming, these emotions. And then finally, as we get down into the deep thoughts and fears, really it's, what if I move and all of a sudden I'm alone? What if I find myself rejected by these new people? These are some deep thoughts that you can get to as you journal, and the Holy Spirit will lead you to that. But if you just try to jump straight to that when you're looking at a blank page, man, that can be just overwhelming and just a little too much. So I encourage you to start basic, just what's going on, and then how is what's going on affecting your life as you walk through. Your facilitator will be able to help you with this as well. There's also some other notes there in your manual. So, final thing that I want to finish up with as we are here in session 1 is once again just to welcome you to the furnace. This is going to be a wonderful time in your life. It's going to be a wonderful season for you to begin to dig down. We'll talk about this a little bit more, but the foundational verse for the furnace is out of Proverbs 25:4. Remove the dross from the silver, and out comes material for the silversmith. The dross is simply imperfections, impurities in the way that I think. You guys know, and we'll get into this later too, how you think will always lead to how you act. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So if you have been trying to act in a certain way and you've been struggling with it, you can do it sometimes, but you never can quite do it for the length of time that you would like, and you're feeling bad and guilty and ashamed and all that about it. It's not about you having a stronger will. It's not about you, I'm really going to try harder, although that's what most of us do. We just try harder to do the right thing. It's about learning a new way of thinking. Romans chapter 12 talks about it's about not just being conformed to the world, but being transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's learning how to think. So this is what the furnace is all about. As we walk through, it's about learning how to think rightly about God. It's learning how to think rightly about how life works and the path of life. So in our first Furnace 1 and Furnace 2, F1 and F2, what we say a lot, we're going to be spending all of our time talking about how to think. And then as we get into F3 and F4, we'll begin to talk about how to act. If we try to get into just behavior modification, it won't last. It'll work for a moment, but eventually it'll slip through your fingers. So we have to learn how to think. So that's what I hope you'll begin to be willing to open your heart up to, beginning to open up and allow the Lord, the Holy Spirit, the furnace facilitator, to spend time to open up with Him, even those that are in your F1 class right now. Begin to open up and talk with them and let yourself grow without feeling like you have to control it and be afraid that if anyone really knew who I was and what was going on, they'd reject me immediately. It's a dangerous place and a very lonely place to be. So welcome to the furnace. Welcome to the fire. The way that you remove dross in silver is you got to heat it up. So I hope that your experiences will cause enough pressure in your life so that you can come into each one of these sessions with a lot of questions of what the heck's going on? All right, look forward to talking to you in session 2.
How you think is the most important thing about you.